I grew up in a family of divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 4. When your parents get divorced, it creates a lot of confusion in your life. Part of you thinks that maybe the reason why your parents aren't together anymore is your fault. You feel guilty. You want your dad and your mom in your life, and you want them in your life together, not separately. After my parents divorced, I started to develop a lot of anger issues in my life. I was angry that my parents were split up, and I was angry because the relationship that I had with my dad wasn't great. I needed a dad in my life, but all I had was this guy that I played video games with that constantly belittled my mom in front of me. I grew up in a Christian home and was always in church every Sunday. When I reached a certain age, though, I told my mom that she couldn't force me to go to church anymore. As I stopped attending church, I started to fill that Jesus-shaped void in my life with worldly things. I started to try and cope with the way that I felt inside with sin and not with Jesus. Freshman year, I started experimenting with drugs. I thought I had finally found something to help me cope with how I felt inside. I could mask my hurt and stuff my pain with the things that took the edge off. As I started to get older, the drugs started to get harder. By the age of 20, I had replaced my pain pill addiction for heroin. I always thought that the reason I did drugs was because I just enjoyed the way that they made me feel. After I got sober, I realized that it wasn't just the high that I was addicted to. I was running from my problems. It was easier to just stuff stuff instead of face my issues. It was like trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. I reached rock bottom for the second time in my life in 2015. I was 24 years old, and I had been a heroin addict for 4 years at that point. I had lost everything in my life. My mom had turned me on to a program called Teen Challenge. It was a faith-based, year-long rehab program for people struggling with addiction. I joined the program in March of 2015. My second day in the program, I rededicated my life to Christ. Now, when I was in the program, they had us get into small groups and go through a healing process that was pretty similar to the 12 steps. It helped you dig into your past and to figure out what led you to your addictive behaviors. It helped you to realize that drugs weren't the only issue in your life. I learned that drugs were just the tip of the iceberg. Now, if I wanted to fully recover, I knew that I had a lot of baggage and hurt to sort through. I was only going to be able to do that with the help of Jesus, a community of believers, and if I stopped stuffing all my issues and faced them head on. This was my first taste of something that was similar to what we do at Celebrate Recovery. I feel like a lot of people believe the misconception that as long as you can get off the dope, things will be better. But that's just simply not the case. The drugs are merely just a symptom of an underlying condition. If we just continue to treat the symptoms, we are never actually curing the disease. Now, my favorite analogy for dealing with addiction or negative coping mechanisms in our lives compares our hurts and our baggage to gardening. In all of our gardens, we have two things. We have beautiful flowers that represent our good habits and infestations of weeds that represent our bad habits. If we want to get rid of the weeds in our lives, we can't just keep pulling up what we see on the surface. We have to roll up our sleeves and give those suckers a good yank. We need to dig deep and pull up those roots. And if we don't pull up the roots, those weeds are just going to keep coming back time and time again. Now, it's the same thing with our hurts, you guys. We need to roll up our sleeves and use the necessary tools to dig up those roots in our lives. We need to figure out what the root causes are that keep feeding our coping mechanisms, causing them to sprout up in our lives. Celebrate Recovery is a major tool that we can use. Now, I think that a lot of the time when people think about Celebrate Recovery or recovery meetings at all for that matter, we tend to think of a bunch of people with just drug or alcohol addictions sitting around a circle, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes. So I'm here to tell you that simply just couldn't be farther from the truth. Celebrate Recovery is such a great resource. You'll walk through the doors and you'll find people that struggle. Sure, you'll find some people that struggle with drug or alcohol addiction, but you'll also find people that struggle with so many other coping mechanisms that don't bloom in such obvious ways. There is just so much camaraderie here on Monday nights, and we're here to lean on each other. We listen to each other's issues. We walk hand in hand with other believers that are brave enough to take off their masks and talk about how they struggle and how God is working in their lives to navigate through the baggage. We have the opportunity to dig into our past, and I've met some of my closest friends in Celebrate Recovery. We get the opportunity to find accountability partners and sponsors that will help us along the way. The truth is that every single one of us in this room has hurts that we've been through and coping mechanisms that we have picked up along the way to protect ourselves. Now, if you're someone that has a weed that just keeps sprouting up in your life that you thought that you got rid of, no matter how big or how small, we want you to feel welcome into the CR family. So come join us on Monday nights. We hope to see you there, and thanks for letting me share.